had always admired my boss. He was the kind of man everyone respected. Wealthy, powerful, and in complete control. I had worked under him for 3 years, always trying to prove myself, always hoping he'd notice my dedication. When he called me into his office one afternoon and told me I'd be handling an important business deal out of town, I felt like I had finally earned his trust. But then he said something unexpected. His wife would be accompanying me. "It's a simple deal," he said, leaning back in his chair. "She knows the client well. Think of her as an asset." I nodded, hiding my surprise. His wife, Lillian, was someone I had only seen in passing. Elegant, poised, and strikingly beautiful. I had heard whispers around the office, rumors that their marriage wasn't as perfect as it seemed, but I never paid attention to gossip. Now, I had no choice but to spend an entire trip with her. When I met her at the airport, she greeted me with a warm smile. "So, you're the one my husband trusts," she said, her voice smooth, almost playful. I laughed it off, keeping it professional. The flight was uneventful, just polite conversation about work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was studying me. Every time I glanced her way, she was already looking. At the hotel, we checked in separately, but she lingered as I collected my key. "You should join me for dinner," she said casually. "We'll go over the deal." It felt more like a command than a suggestion. I hesitated, but she raised an eyebrow. "It's just dinner." I agreed. She chose an upscale restaurant inside the hotel, dimly lit, the kind of place where conversations were meant to be intimate. When she arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. The formal dress she wore accentuated every curve, nothing like the reserved woman I had seen in the office. She caught my reaction and smiled. "Relax," she said as we sat. "We're just colleagues, right?" I nodded, but the way she leaned in, the way her fingers brushed mine when she handed me the menu, it felt deliberate. As dinner went on, the conversation shifted. She asked about my personal life, my relationships. I kept my answers brief, but she pressed on, sipping her wine slowly. "You must get lonely," she said, tilting her head. "Working so hard, always trying to impress my husband." I swallowed hard. "I just want to do my job well." He smirked. "And here you are, doing exactly what he asked." There was something unsettling about the way she said it, like she knew more than she was letting on. I felt a strange tension settle between us. As the night ended, she placed a hand on my arm, lingering just a second too long. "One more drink." In my suite. I knew then that this trip was about to take a turn I never expected. I hesitated at her door. My mind screamed at me to walk away, to pretend nothing unusual had happened, but my feet stayed rooted. She watched me with a knowing look, the kind that said she had already made up her mind. I wasn't sure when the balance of power had shifted, but it was clear now. I wasn't in control. She stepped back, leaving the door open. An invitation. I swallowed hard and followed her inside. The suite was lavish, but my focus wasn't on the decor. She poured 2 drinks, handing me one, her fingers grazing mine. "To a successful trip," she said, but her eyes suggested something else. I took a sip, unsure of what to say. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of decisions yet to be made. She sat beside me on the couch, too close, her perfume a mix of something expensive and dangerous. "My husband trusts you," she said, running a finger along the rim of her glass. "That must feel good." I nodded, unsure where she was going with this. She tilted her head, studying me. "But do you trust yourself?" My pulse quickened. "I don't think we should." She laughed softly, cutting me off. "Don't think. Just be here." She leaned in, and for a split second I did nothing. Then her lips brushed mine. It was barely a touch, but it sent a shock through me. I pulled back, but she didn't let me go far. "No one has to know," she whispered. My breath was uneven, my thoughts tangled. Everything about this was wrong. But the way she looked at me, the way her body pressed against mine, it made resistance feel impossible. I could have stopped it. I should have. But when she kissed me again, deeper this time, I didn't pull away. There was no turning back now. Her lips were soft, deliberate, as if she had already decided how this night would unfold. My mind fought against it, reminding me of everything at stake, but my body had already surrendered. The taste of wine lingered on her mouth, the warmth of her skin against mine dissolving any last shred of logic. Her fingers slid over my shirt, slow, teasing, stripping away any excuse I might have given myself. "You think too much," she murmured, pulling me closer. I should have stopped then, should have walked away before the line was crossed. But it was too late. My hands were on her waist, gripping tighter than they should have. She gasped, but it wasn't in protest. The room felt smaller, the world outside this moment non-existent. There were no second thoughts, no guilt, only the heat of her touch, the way she fit against me like she had been waiting for this. My name left her lips in a whisper, almost like a secret, and that was the moment I knew I was in too deep. Time blurred. I couldn't tell when hesitation turned to urgency, when uncertainty became hunger. The night moved in fragments, her breath against my neck, my hands tangled in her hair, the way she looked at me like I was the only thing that existed. It wasn't love, not even close, but it was something dangerous, something intoxicating. When it was over, silence stretched between us. She lay beside me, completely at ease, while I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. Reality was setting in, creeping through the haze of lust like a warning too late to heed. She turned to face me, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. "See," she whispered. "No one has to know." But deep down I knew that was a lie. The flight home was quiet. She acted as if nothing had happened, as if the night before was just another detail in her perfectly curated life. I, on the other hand, could barely breathe. Every glance at her felt like a reminder of what I had done, of the betrayal I had willingly walked into. Back at the office, I avoided my boss. I told myself it was paranoia, that he had no way of knowing. But something felt off. His usual firm handshake lingered a second too long. His eyes held something unreadable. I convinced myself I was imagining it, until the call came. "Come to my office," he said. The walk down the hall felt endless. When I stepped inside, he gestured for me to sit, but I couldn't. My hands clenched at my sides as he watched me, too calm, too calculating. "You had a good trip." His voice was smooth, unreadable. "Yes," I forced out, my throat dry. He nodded, then leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the desk. "Lillian told me everything." The room spun. My stomach dropped. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. There was no excuse, no way to explain myself. He sighed, shaking his head. "You're not the first, you know." I frowned, my confusion cutting through the panic. "She does this," he continued. "Every time I bring someone new in. Test. The word hit harder than any accusation. "She told me you'd break," he said, his voice almost amused. And she was right. Everything inside me collapsed. "You're done here." His tone was final. "Pack your things." As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. Message. "Lillian ****, I told you it would be our secret." Too bad he already knew ***. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. I had lost everything, for what? A moment of weakness. A game I never even knew I was playing. I walked out of the office, out of the life I had spent years building, with nothing left but regret.